Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good day so far. Hope you're able to use some of the tools that were posted yesterday in the chat. And I'm just going to dive right in. Today is a recap of our first week of studying the life of Paul, or specifically what we can find out about Paul from the book of Philippians. So we're just going to talk about the who, what, where, when, how of this past week, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up for this coming week. So who was Paul? In Acts 9, we learn of Paul's conversion. Paul was there at the death of Stephen. You may have heard of him before. Stephen was a believer that was stoned. Paul was there giving approval to his death. He was going house to house, dragging Christians out of their homes and putting them in jail. He was very much on the wrong side of history, so to speak. And we learn in Acts 9 that Paul has this amazing conversion story. You'll have to go back and read it. But basically, Jesus comes to him and speaks to him. He's blinded. We learn about his conversion. After he's converted, he immediately starts preaching about Christ. And it takes the believers a while to believe that, is this the same guy? Is this Saul, who's now Paul, but is this the same Saul that was dragging Christians and the believers out of their homes and persecuting them and throwing them in prison? They didn't trust his conversion at first, but we know that he was a Hebrew of Hebrews from the tribe of Benjamin. He was a Pharisee. He knew the law inside and out and was blameless. He had followed the law ever since he was little bitty, and he was very legalistic in that he thought he was right. And, fast forward, we know that Paul traveled with Silas. He founded the church in Philippi during his second missionary journey. Paul had 3 missionary journeys that are recorded. Of course, the last one, he loses his life. But during the second missionary journey, it's around 49 or 50 AD, he goes to the colony of Philippi. And it's not until about 10 years later that he writes a letter to the church in Philippi. But you can read about his second missionary journey in Acts 15:36 through 18:22. During that journey, he comes to a place called Troas, and it's right on the coast. And he basically has a vision at night of a man standing over him saying, "Please come over and help us." And the man is from Macedonia. Well, Philippi is a colony in Macedonia. So Paul takes this vision to heart and considers it God's way of letting him know that he needs to go preach the gospel to Macedonia. And so that's what he does. He sails across the sea and eventually ends up in Philippi. And there is a woman there named Lydia, who the scripture says that God opens her heart to receive the gospel. So she's Paul's first convert in Europe, in the city. And her whole household gets saved. We also learn about this really strange story. I thought it was so weird when I was reading it, but there's a woman who is essentially a fortune teller, and she has the spirit of divination. I don't really know what that means, but I think it's probably not good. But she's able to tell the future, and there are men in that city that are kind of hiring her out. Think of it as a type of prostitution in a way. The men are using her to get money because she's able to accurately tell the fortunes of people. And Paul and Silas are walking through the city, and this woman who basically has this spirit in her and has been telling fortunes, she starts following them and yelling out, "These are men of the high God, and they are pointing the way to salvation," which you would think would be kind of a good thing for her to be saying this. But she's just making a big scene. And Paul and Silas, that's not really the way that they want to win over the city. But Paul gets really annoyed. So after days of this woman following them and just being really annoying and yelling and causing a big scene, Paul turns around and just casts this spirit out of her, which is awesome because now she can become a believer, right? Well, there's a problem. The men that have been using her are really angry that she can no longer tell people's fortunes. And so they get really angry and they attack Paul and Silas and they drag them before the magistrates. The magistrates were kind of like the civil and military leaders in the city. And they basically get Paul and Silas in so much trouble. Now, they don't even mention the fact that, well, we were using this woman to make money. They say something like, these men are going against the customs of Rome and causing problems. And so the magistrates buy their story and they basically have Paul and Silas beaten with rods, and then they're thrown into prison and they have stocks around their feet. So this is not looking good. I mean, you can picture from Paul's perspective, like, Lord, you gave me this vision that there were people in Macedonia that need you and that need the gospel. And here we are. We've had one convert, Lydia, and now we're in jail. And so what happens now, Lord? But that's not their attitude at all. It says that around midnight, Paul and Silas are actually praying and singing songs, and all the prisoners are listening, and they're probably thinking, well, these guys are nuts. Why are they singing and praying? You're literally bound. You got shackles around your feet. Why are you praying and singing? But the prisoners are listening to them. The jailer is probably listening to them. And then about midnight, it says that there was a huge earthquake and the prison foundations shook and the shackles fall off of their feet, off of all of the prisoners' feet, actually. It's not just Paul and Silas that are released. The chains fall off of all of the prisoners' feet and the doors fling open. And it says that the jailer rushes in thinking that all of the prisoners have escaped and he's about to kill himself. My guess is he was about to plunge a sword into his own belly. And Paul says, wait, we're all here. We're all here. None of us have left. And this whole situation is so incredible that the jailer just falls before Paul and Silas. He falls at their feet and says, what do I need to do to be saved? And so this crazy situation in which Paul and Silas find themselves, that, they could have questioned God and said, what are you doing? You told us to come here, and now we're in jail. They just trusted God's plan, and God used the jailer and that situation. We don't know how many of those prisoners became saved, but we know from the scriptures that the jailer became saved and his entire household. So that is the beginning of the church in Philippi. We've got Lydia, who was saved right out of the gate, and her entire household. We have this strange story of this girl that is a fortune teller. Who knows? I think maybe she became a disciple too. And then we have the story of the jailer and his entire household. So that is the beginning of our church in Philippi. We know that Paul was there for just a few months. 10 years later, he writes the letter to the church there, encouraging them. And that's the letter that we're reading, that we're studying. So I want to leave you with some questions that I want you to think about. And then we're going to start, starting tomorrow, we're going to dig into some more of the themes of the book of Philippians. We've now learned so much about Paul and kind of his, the who, the what, the where, when, and how. And now we're going to start digging into the themes of Philippians and how we can apply those to our lives. But just think about today, why did Paul write the letter? What keywords and themes did you find in the letter? Those are some of the things that we're going to start studying. What did you learn about Paul's life? What was inspiring to you? What do you want to apply to your own life? What do you want to have mirrored in your own life? And just your overall impressions about the letters. Again, we've done a very kind of shallow dive. Now we're going to really dive deep into the book of Philippians. So I know it's going to be awesome. I love you guys. I hope that you have a wonderful day. I did promise a video yesterday on our word study about dogs. I got behind on my day and I was not able to do that. I'm going to do my best to post it today, just for those of you that are interested in that. I love you. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you tomorrow.